The war had lasted 11 years, and the human empire was losing. It did not happen all at once. It happened slowly, the way a body loses blood. First, the colonies on the outer rim went dark, one after another, like candles going out in a long hallway. Then the shipyards at Ceres stopped sending new hulls. Then the news stopped being honest, because honesty had become bad for morale. By the 11th year, only 3 fleets were left to defend 8 billion people, and one of those fleets was made of ships that should have been scrapped a decade ago. Admiral Elena Voss stood on the bridge of the Ares Sentinel, watching a screen that showed the last known positions of the enemy warfleet. The enemy called themselves the Calith Dominion, though most humans just called them the Grey Fleet, because their ships were the color of ash and smoke. The Grey Fleet was 300 ships strong. Elena had 41. "Ma'am," said Lieutenant Ren Okafor, the young communications officer, "Central Command wants your report." "Tell them the truth," Elena said. "Tell them we cannot hold Perimeter Station 6. Ren swallowed hard, but said nothing more. He had learned, over the past year, that arguing with the Admiral rarely changed anything, and it never made the numbers better. Elena walked to the viewport. Outside, Perimeter Station 6 hung in the dark like a broken toy, half its lights gone out, its outer hull scorched from 3 separate attacks in the past month. 600,000 people lived there. Farmers, teachers, engineers, children who had never seen the sun because the station's dome had been shattered years ago and never repaired. If the Grey Fleet reached this station, none of those 600,000 people would survive. That was not a guess. It was a pattern. The Calith Dominion did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. In 11 years, no human colony that had been cleansed, as the Dominion called it, had ever been heard from again. "Ma'am, incoming message from Central Command," Ren said. "They are ordering us to retreat to the Sol system and consolidate all remaining forces." "And Perimeter Station 6? Ren looked down at his console, and Elena already knew the answer before he spoke it. "They say the station is not sustainable to defend." Elena closed her eyes for 1 second. Just one. Then she opened them again, because a commander did not get to close her eyes for longer than that. Not anymore. "Get me a channel to the council," she said. "I want to speak to someone who still remembers we are supposed to protect people, not just territory." 3 hours later, in a cramped conference room deep inside the Ares Sentinel, Elena sat across from a hologram of Counselor Marcus Chen, the closest thing humanity had left to a united government. The old human empire, once spread across 40 star systems, had shrunk to 12. Chen looked tired in the way that men look tired when they have made too many decisions that cost other people their lives. "Elena," Chen said, "I know what you want to ask. The answer is still no. We do not have the ships." "Then give me something else," Elena said. "A weapon, a trick, anything. There are 600,000 civilians on that station, Marcus. Not soldiers, civilians." Chen rubbed his eyes. "There is one thing," he said slowly, "but you will not like it. Try me. We could send a distress signal into Calith-controlled space, not to the Grey Fleet in front of you, but wider, into the deep territory, to anyone who might hear it, alien or human, allied or not." Elena stared at him. "You want to beg the enemy for help?" "I want to try everything," Chen said. "We have already lost this war on the battlefield, Elena. Maybe we can win something else. Mercy. Curiosity. I don't know. But an open signal, translated into every known alien dialect our linguists have recorded over the past decade, broadcast wide. It has never been tried, because it has never been this desperate." Elena thought of the children on Perimeter Station 6, most of whom had been born after the war started and had never known peace. "Send it," she said. "Send the signal." The message went out that night, broadcast on every frequency human science understood, repeated over and over in dozens of languages, both human and alien. "This is the human empire. We are a species under attack. We do not ask for weapons. We do not ask for soldiers. We ask only that someone, anyone, bear witness to what is happening to 600,000 innocent people on Perimeter Station 6 before they are destroyed. If there is any being in this galaxy who values life, we ask you to hear us." It traveled at the speed of light, spreading outward like ripples in a pond. crossing borders that had never been crossed by human words before. Most of the galaxy would never hear it. Most of those who did hear it would ignore it, because it was not their war, not their species, not their problem. But somewhere, deep inside Kalith Dominion space, aboard a warship called the Thesserai Vengeance, a young captain named Draven Kell sat alone in his quarters, running diagnostics he did not need to run, because sleep would not come to him. His console chimed. An unknown signal. Untranslated at first, then slowly rendered by his ship's language core into something he could understand. Draven Kell read the message 3 times. He was 34 years old in Kalith years, which made him young for a captain, and younger still for what he was about to do. He had grown up believing, as all Kalith citizens were taught, that humans were savage, chaotic, and beneath consideration. The war had been framed to his people not as conquest, but as necessity. Humans, they were told, bred too fast, expanded too fast, and would consume every resource in reach if not stopped. He had believed that, mostly, for most of his life. But 3 years ago, his own ship had taken part in the cleansing of a human colony called New Meridian. He had seen the reports afterward. 200,000 civilians. Not soldiers. Farmers. He had told himself it was necessary. He had told himself many things. He had not slept well since. Draven read the message a 4th time. We ask only that someone bear witness. He thought about what it would mean to answer. He thought about the Dominion's laws, which made unauthorized contact with the enemy a crime punishable by execution. He thought about his crew, all 112 of them, who trusted him to bring them home alive. He thought about the children of New Meridian, whose faces he had never seen, but whose names he had read in a casualty report he was never supposed to open. Draven Kell stood up, walked to his private terminal, and began composing a reply. Back on Perimeter Station 6, 3 days passed with no response of any kind. Elena did not expect one. She had authorized the message because it was the only thing left to try, not because she believed in miracles. She spent those 3 days doing what she could, evacuating who she could evacuate, rationing what fuel remained, preparing the last defenses her 41 ships could offer against 300. On the 4th day, Ren Okafor burst onto the bridge, his face pale. "Ma'am," he said, "we have an incoming transmission. It's Kalith, encrypted, but the header format matches military command channels." Elena's stomach turned to ice. "Are they announcing an attack?" "No, ma'am." Ren's hands were shaking as he pulled up the message on the main screen. It's just one ship, one signature. It says it's requesting permission to approach under a flag of parley. The bridge went silent. Every officer turned to look at the admiral. "One ship," Elena repeated. "Out of 300. One ship answered. "Yes, ma'am." Elena stared at the tactical display, where a single new contact had appeared at the edge of sensor range, moving alone, no escort, no fleet behind it. A single Kalith warship, breaking away from everything it had ever been taught to believe, coming to answer a message that should have been ignored by every reasonable calculation of war. "Bring it in," Elena said quietly. "Let's see what kind of enemy comes when no one else will." She did not know yet that this single decision, to let one ship through, one captain, one impossible answer to an impossible plea, would change the shape of the entire war. She only knew that hope, when it appeared, rarely announced itself with fanfare. Sometimes it came quietly, alone, against every order it had ever been given. Somewhere in the dark between the stars, Draven Kell guided the Thesserai Vengeance toward human space, carrying with him the terrible weight of a decision that could not be undone, and the small, stubborn hope that he was doing, at last, the right thing. Behind him, unseen and unheard, the rest of the Grey Fleet continued its advance, 300 ships strong, entirely unaware that one of their own had already chosen a different path. The war was not over, but for the first time in 11 years, it had changed. The Thesserai Vengeance dropped out of high-speed travel at the very edge of Perimeter Station 6's defense line, and every gun on every human ship turned toward it at once. Admiral Elena Voss watched the tactical display with her jaw tight. One enemy warship, alone, its shields down, its weapons powered off according to every scan her officers could run. It looked exactly like what it claimed to be. A single captain, coming without support, without backup, without any way to defend himself if the humans decided to open fire. "Ma'am, all batteries are locked on target," said her weapons officer, a broad-shouldered man named Cole Bennett. "Say the word, and we end this before it starts." "Hold fire," Elena said. "Ma'am, this could be a trap. A single ship scouting our defenses before the main fleet." "I said hold fire, Lieutenant." Elena did not raise her voice, but something in her tone made Bennett go quiet immediately. If they wanted to scout us, they would not announce themselves with a flag of parley. "Open a channel." Ren Okafor's hands moved fast across his console. "Channel open, ma'am." The screen flickered, and for the first time in the war, a human commander looked directly at the face of a Kalith captain, instead of through a targeting reticle. Draven Kell was tall, even by Kalith standards, with gray-blue skin and dark eyes that held none of the cold cruelty Elena had expected. He looked, more than anything, exhausted, like a man who had not slept properly in a long time. "I am Captain Draven Kell of the Kalith Dominion," he said. His voice was translated a half-second after he spoke, giving the conversation an odd, layered rhythm. "I received your message. I have come alone, because my superiors would never have approved this, and because I did not want to give you any reason to think this was an attack." "I am Admiral Elena Voss," Elena replied. "Forgive me if I remain cautious, Captain. Your people have given mine very little reason to trust." "I understand," Draven said. "I do not ask for trust yet. I ask only to be heard, as your message asked to be heard." Elena studied his face on the screen for a long moment. Around her, the bridge crew waited in tense silence, weapons still locked, fingers still hovering near triggers. "Then speak, Captain," Elena said. "Tell me why you came when 300 of your people did not." Draven Kell had rehearsed what he would say for 3 days, during the long journey from Dominion space. But standing now in front of the woman whose message had changed his life, all his rehearsed words disappeared, and he found himself speaking plainly instead. "3 years ago," he said, "I took part in the cleansing of a colony your people called New Meridian. I was told it was necessary. I was told your species could not be reasoned with, that you expanded without limit, that leaving you unchecked would eventually cost my people everything. I believed this, because I had been taught to believe it since I was a child." He paused. The bridge of the Ares Sentinel was silent enough that Elena could hear her own heartbeat. "After the cleansing," Draven continued, "I read the reports, not the official ones. The real ones, 200,000 people, farmers, teachers, children. I told myself this was the cost of protecting my own people. I told myself this for 3 years. And now?" Elena asked quietly. "Now I have read your message," Draven said. "We ask only that someone bear witness. You did not ask for weapons. You did not ask for an alliance. You asked only to not die unseen and unremembered. I could not ignore that a second time." Elena felt something shift inside her chest, something she had not felt in a long time. Not trust, not yet. But the beginning of something that might become trust, given time. "Why would helping us matter to you, Captain?" she asked. "Your empire is not fighting for survival. You are fighting for expansion. What do you personally gain by risking execution to answer a dying species' plea?" Draven's dark eyes held hers through the screen. "Because I am tired of being the kind of person who reads a casualty report and calls it necessary," he said. "I do not know if I can save your station. I do not know if I can change anything at all. But I could not let the message go unanswered. That is the only honest answer I have." Elena requested that Draven's ship be allowed to dock at the station under close guard, and after a tense debate among her officers, Bennett was furious, insisting it was reckless beyond reason. She made the final call. "If we are going to ask the galaxy to see us as more than prey," Elena said, "we need to be willing to see others as more than enemies. Let him dock." The Thesserai Vengeance docked at Perimeter Station 6, 2 hours later, and Draven Kell walked off his ship alone, unarmed, into a station full of people who had every reason in the world to hate him on sight. They did not attack him, but the silence that greeted him, the stares, the fear in the eyes of children who had grown up hearing stories about gray monsters that destroyed worlds, that silence was its own kind of judgment, and Draven bore it without complaint. He was brought to a secure meeting room deep inside the station, where Elena waited with her senior staff, and Counselor Marcus Chen, joining remotely by hologram. "Captain Kell," Chen said, his holographic face carefully neutral. "You understand that what you have done is extraordinary. A single Caliph officer, defying his own empire's laws, to answer a message from a species your government has spent over a decade trying to destroy. Forgive us if we ask you to prove your intentions before we proceed." "I expect nothing less," Draven said. "Ask what you need to ask." For the next several hours, Draven answered every question put to him. He confirmed troop numbers he knew. He confirmed fleet positions from 3 weeks prior, though he warned that positions changed constantly, and his information might already be outdated. He explained, as best he could, the political structure of the Dominion, the chain of command that had ordered the war, and the propaganda that had convinced an entire species that humanity was a threat that must be erased before it could grow too large to stop. "That is the core lie," Draven said. "My people are told humans are a plague. Left unchecked, you will consume every resource in the galaxy. It is not entirely untrue that your species expands quickly, but the conclusion drawn from that fact, that you must be exterminated rather than negotiated with, that conclusion is a choice, not a necessity. A choice made by leaders who benefit from endless war." "Why would anyone benefit from endless war?" asked Bennett, still deeply suspicious, arms crossed as he stood near the door. "Power," Draven said simply. "Fear of an external enemy keeps a population obedient. It keeps resources flowing toward military production, controlled by the same families who have led the Dominion for 300 years. Your extinction is not the true goal, Lieutenant. Your extinction is simply useful." The room was quiet for a long moment as this sank in. "Then help us end it," Elena said. "Not just this battle, the war itself." Draven looked at her, and for the first time since arriving, something like hope flickered across his tired features. "I do not know if that is possible," he said, "but I am willing to try. I did not come here only to warn you about one attack, Admiral. I came here because I believe there may be a way to expose the truth to my own people, if we can find the right moment and the right proof." That night, while the station's defenses remained on high alert and the Grey Fleet continued its slow, patient advance toward Perimeter Station 6, Elena stood alone in an observation deck, watching the stars, when Draven found her there. "You are wondering if you made a mistake, letting me aboard," he said. "I am wondering many things," Elena admitted. "Whether I can trust you, whether trusting you could cost the lives of everyone on this station, whether this is the beginning of something good, or simply a longer, crueler way to lose." "I cannot promise you victory," Draven said. "I can only promise that I will not lie to you, and that I did not come this far to betray the only people in this galaxy willing to listen to me." Elena turned to look at him. "Why does that matter so much to you, Captain?" "Being listened to?" Draven was quiet for a long moment. "Because for 3 years," he said finally, "I have not been able to speak the truth to anyone in my own empire without risking death. You are the first people who have let me say it out loud." Below them, in the depths of the station, 600,000 people slept uneasily, unaware that their fate now rested partly in the hands of an enemy captain who had chosen, against everything he had been raised to believe, to try to save them instead of destroy them. Far beyond the station's defenses, the Grey Fleet continued its advance. 300 ships, closing the distance day by day, entirely unaware that the human they were coming to erase had just gained an ally from within their own ranks. The next few days would decide everything, and for the first time in 11 long years of war, Elena Voss allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. 5 days after Draven Kell docked at Perimeter Station 6, the Grey Fleet's outer scouts appeared on long-range sensors, and the countdown to battle truly began. Elena Voss stood in the war room with her senior officers. Draven Kell, seated at the far end of the table, still watched closely by 2 armed guards who never left his side. Trust had grown slightly over the past days, but not enough to remove the guards. Not yet. 300 ships, said Cole Bennett, pointing at the tactical display. 41 of ours. Even with everything Captain Kell has told us, those numbers do not change. They can change, Draven said quietly. Not through strength, through information. All eyes turned to him. The Grey Fleet commander is a man named Karsov Thane, Draven continued. I served under him for 2 years before my current post. He is skilled, but he is also arrogant, and he believes utterly in Dominion superiority. He will not expect deception from a species he considers primitive. That arrogance is a weakness we can use. Go on, Elena said. Thane's fleet formation always follows the same doctrine, Draven said, pulling up a holographic display from data stored on a small drive he had brought from his own ship. Heavy cruisers in the front line, command ship protected in the center rear, support and supply vessels trailing behind. He believes this formation is unbreakable, because no enemy has ever had the information to exploit it. Until now, Bennett said slowly, beginning to understand. Until now, Draven agreed. If you can draw his front line into an overextended position, make him believe he is winning, make him push forward too quickly, there is a gap that opens between his forward cruisers and his command ship. It lasts only minutes. But if a strike force is ready and positioned correctly, it is enough time to reach the command ship directly. Elena studied the holographic display, her mind already working through tactics. You are suggesting we do not fight the whole fleet. We fight for one target, Thane himself. Kill the head and the body panics, Draven said. Dominion command structure is rigid. Officers do not act without orders from above. If Thane falls and no clear successor takes command immediately, the fleet will hesitate. That hesitation could be the only opening you get. And if it does not work? Bennett asked. If we throw everything at one target and fail? Then you have lost nothing you were not already going to lose, Draven said simply. 41 ships cannot defeat 300 in open battle. You already know this. The only question is whether you die attempting nothing, or die attempting something that might actually work. The room was silent. It was a hard truth, spoken plainly. But Elena had learned over 11 years of war that hard truths spoken plainly were more valuable than comfortable lies. Do it, she said. Build the plan around Captain Kell's information. We fight for one shot at Thane's command ship. Over the next 2 days, the plan took shape. Elena's engineers worked with Draven to understand Dominion targeting systems, shield frequencies, and communication protocols. It was strange, uncomfortable work at first. Humans and their enemy's own officer, sitting side by side, sharing knowledge that had been shed in blood for over a decade. Slowly, the discomfort began to fade, replaced by something more practical, mutual respect born from shared effort. Lieutenant Ren Okafor, still young and still deeply uncertain about trusting a Calith officer, found himself working late one night, alongside Draven, cross-referencing communication frequencies. Can I ask you something, Captain? Ren said, not looking up from his console. You may. Do you have a family? Back in Dominion space, I mean. People you're risking, by doing this. Draven was quiet for a moment. I had a sister, he said finally. She died in an accident on a mining colony 6 years ago. My parents are both retired from military service, living quietly, uninvolved in politics. If the Dominion learns what I have done, they will likely be questioned, perhaps imprisoned. I have thought about this many times since I answered your message. And it didn't stop you? It almost did, Draven admitted, but I kept thinking of New Meridian, of the 200,000 people who died because officers like me followed orders without question. If I stopped now, out of fear for my own family's safety, I would become exactly the kind of officer I am trying to stop being. Ren nodded slowly, something shifting in how he looked at the alien captain sitting across from him. That's braver than most people I know, he said. Or more foolish, Draven said, with the faintest hint of dry humor. History will decide which. Elena spent the 2 days before battle speaking with Counselor Chen, arranging for civilian evacuation ships to be ready the moment battle began, in case the plan failed and the station needed to be abandoned entirely. She also spent time, quietly, observing Draven Kell whenever she could, trying to understand the man who had crossed an impossible line to stand among his enemies. She found him one evening, in the station's small observation garden, one of the few green spaces that had survived the war's long attrition. He was looking at a row of small flowering plants, an expression of quiet curiosity on his face. We do not have plants like this in Dominion space, he said, noticing her approach. Not growing freely, in soil, exposed like this. Everything at home is grown in controlled facilities. Efficient, but sterile, I suppose. They're just flowers, Elena said, sitting on a bench nearby. They are more than that, Draven said. They are proof that your people, even after 11 years of war, even with everything you have lost, still choose to grow something beautiful instead of only what is useful. That tells me something about who you are." Elena studied him for a long moment. "You could have stayed home, Captain, followed orders, lived a comfortable, safe life within your empire. Instead, you're here, risking execution, fighting alongside the species you were raised to hate. Do you regret it?" "Every day I do not regret it is a day I am glad I chose this," Draven said. "But I would be lying if I said there was no fear. I do not know if this plan will work. I do not know if I will live to see whether it does. I only know that doing nothing was no longer something I could live with." "That makes two of us," Elena said quietly. For a moment, neither of them spoke, watching the small garden's flowers catch the artificial light of the station's damaged dome, a small patch of color and life in the middle of a war that had taken so much of both. On the third day, sensors confirmed the Grey Fleet's main force was 3 hours from engagement range. Elena gathered her fleet's captains, all 40 of them, commanding what remained of humanity's strength in this sector, for a final briefing. Draven stood beside her, no longer under guard, having earned at least this much trust over the past week. 300 ships are coming, Elena told her assembled captains. "We cannot beat them in open battle, and I will not pretend otherwise to any of you. But we have something the Dominion does not expect. Information from inside their own command structure, and a plan built on that information." She outlined the strategy Draven had helped design, a controlled retreat designed to look like desperation, drawing Thane's forward cruisers into overextension, opening a gap toward the command ship that a small strike force would use to attempt a single decisive strike. "This is not a plan built to win a war," Elena said. "It is a plan built to survive one battle, and to prove that this war can be fought differently than anyone has fought it before. I will not order any of you to take risks I am not willing to take myself. I will be leading the strike force personally." A murmur went through the room. Bennett stepped forward immediately. "Ma'am, with respect, the Admiral does not lead frontline strikes." "This Admiral does," Elena said firmly. "I asked Captain Kell to risk everything by coming here. I will not ask my people to risk their lives on a plan I am unwilling to fly myself." Draven watched her with something like admiration in his tired eyes. "Then I am coming with you," he said. "My knowledge of Thane's command ship defenses will be more useful in the moment of the strike than from a safe distance." Elena considered this, then nodded once. "Prep the Ares Sentinel strike squadron," she said to her officers. "Battle begins in 3 hours. Everyone, get some rest if you can. Tomorrow, we find out if hope was worth the risk." As the room emptied, Elena remained behind for a moment, looking at the tactical display, at the 300 red markers slowly advancing toward her 40. Somewhere among them was Karsov Thane, confident in his superiority, unaware that the officer who once served under him had crossed every line to help destroy that confidence. The war had taken everything from humanity, except its will, to keep fighting. Tomorrow, they would find out if that will, combined with one enemy captain's courage, was enough to change everything. The Grey Fleet arrived exactly when the sensors predicted, 300 ships spreading across the black in a formation Draven Kell knew by heart. Heavy cruisers forward, command ship protected deep in the center rear, supply vessels trailing behind like a long gray shadow. Elena Voss sat in the command chair of the Ares Sentinel, watching the enemy fleet grow closer on the main display, her 40 remaining ships arranged in a formation designed to look weaker and more desperate than it truly was. "Ma'am, Grey Fleet is entering extreme engagement range," Ren Okafor reported, his voice tight with tension. "Hold formation," Elena said. "Let them come to us. We want Thane confident, not cautious." Beside her, Draven Kell watched the same display with a different kind of tension, the tension of a man watching former comrades approach, knowing he was about to help destroy them. "Thane will send his forward cruisers first," Draven said quietly. "He will expect an easy victory. Do not give him one too quickly. Resist just enough to draw him forward. Too little resistance, and he will suspect a trap." "Understood," Elena said. She turned to Bennett. "Weapons free on my mark. Target the forward cruisers only. Everyone else holds position." The battle began the way all battles in this war had begun, with the terrible, Silent flash of energy weapons crossing the dark, followed seconds later by the shudder of impacts against shields, the cries of damage control teams, the slow grinding math of attrition that had defined 11 years of loss. But this battle was different from the start, because for the first time, humanity knew exactly what the enemy expected, and exactly how to make him believe he was getting it. Forward cruisers advancing faster than standard doctrine, Draven observed, watching the enemy formation begin to stretch. Thane believes he is winning. Good. Keep resisting, but fall back gradually. Draw them further. Elena gave the orders, and her 40 ships performed a slow, controlled retreat that looked, to any outside observer, exactly like desperation. Ships peeled away in staged patterns, weapons fire grew more sporadic, damage reports called out over comms in tones of rising alarm that were carefully rehearsed rather than real. On the Grey Fleet's side, 300 ships pressed forward, sensing victory, exactly as Draven had predicted. There, Draven said suddenly, pointing at a shift in the enemy formation. The gap is opening. Thane's forward cruisers have overextended. His command ship is less protected than at any point in this battle. This is the moment, Admiral. It will not last long. Elena's heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. Strike Squadron, this is Voss. Launch now. Follow my lead. 12 small strike craft, including Elena's own modified fighter and Draven riding as tactical advisor in the seat behind her, launched from the Ares Sentinel and cut through the chaos of battle, weaving between explosions and debris, racing toward the gap Draven had identified. Thane's command ship shields are strongest on the forward arc, Draven said over the comm, his voice calm despite the danger surrounding them. Approach from the rear quarter. There is a secondary shield generator there, smaller, less protected. Destroy it, and the entire shield network will weaken by nearly half. Copy that, Elena said, banking her fighter hard as enemy point defense fire streaked past. Squadron, target the rear shield generator. Coordinates transmitting now. The 12 strike craft split into two groups, one drawing point defense fire away, the other diving toward the rear of Thane's massive command ship. Elena's own fighter led the second group, weaving through a storm of defensive fire that filled the space around them with deadly light. "Ma'am, we're taking heavy fire," shouted one of the strike pilots. "Torres is hit. Torres is—" The comm cut off in a burst of static, and a new debris field appeared on Elena's display, where a strike craft had been a moment before. She felt the loss like a physical blow, but there was no time to grieve, not yet, not in the middle of a battle that was still being decided. "Keep moving," Elena ordered. "We finish this for Torres, and for everyone else who has already been lost in this war." The remaining strike craft pressed forward, and Elena's fighter, with Draven calling out shield frequencies and defensive gaps in real time, reached the rear shield generator, just as Thane's forward cruisers realized, too late, that something had gone wrong. "Fire now," Draven shouted. Elena's fighter released everything it had, every missile, every energy charge, directly into the exposed shield generator. The explosion that followed lit up the black in a brilliant flash, and across the entire command ship, shields flickered and collapsed in a cascading failure that Draven had predicted with terrifying accuracy. "Shields down across 70% of the command ship," Ren's voice came through, filled with disbelief and rising excitement. "Ma'am, you did it. You actually did it." But the battle was far from over. Karsov Thane, watching his shields collapse from his own command bridge, felt something he had not felt in over a decade of easy victories against a species he considered beneath serious concern. Genuine fear. "How is this possible?" Thane demanded, his voice a furious growl. "These are primitive humans. They should not have this level of tactical precision." His sensor officer, pale and shaking, pointed at a data readout. "Sir, the attack pattern, it matches Dominion tactical doctrine exactly. Whoever coordinated this strike knew our formation, our shield frequencies, our entire strategic approach." Thane's eyes narrowed. "That is not possible unless—" He stopped, a horrible realization dawning on him. Draven Kell, that traitor, he is here, aiding them. "Sir, orders?" Thane's fury burned through him like fire. "Recall the forward cruisers immediately. Full defensive formation around the command ship, now. And find that strike squadron. I want Draven Kell's ship destroyed personally, whatever it costs." But the recall came too late. The forward cruisers, already overextended, took precious minutes to reverse course, and in those minutes, Elena's remaining strike craft pressed their advantage, striking at exposed systems throughout the weakened command ship. Draven watched the chaos unfold with a strange mixture of emotions, satisfaction at the plan working, and grief at watching ships he had once served alongside, torn apart by weapons fire, knowing crews he had once known were dying inside them. "There is still a risk," Draven said, his voice tight. "Thane will not simply retreat. He knows his career, perhaps his life, depends on victory here. He may attempt something desperate." As if summoned by the warning, Elena's sensors lit up with a new alert. "Ma'am, Thane's command ship is charging some kind of weapon system. Massive energy signature, building fast." "What is that?" Elena demanded. Draven's face went pale. "It is a last resort weapon, a self-destruct core, modified for offensive use. If he cannot win this battle, he intends to destroy his own command ship in an explosion large enough to take out everything within a significant radius, including our remaining fleet, if we are close enough. How long until it's ready?" "Minutes. Perhaps less." Elena's mind raced. Retreating now would mean abandoning the advantage they had fought so hard to gain, but staying risked catastrophic losses if Thane's desperate gambit succeeded. "All ships, this is Voss," Elena broadcast fleet-wide. "Prepare for immediate withdrawal to minimum safe distance. Strike Squadron, we need one final push before we pull back. Draven, is there any way to stop that weapon from firing?" Draven's mind worked furiously, drawing on every piece of knowledge from his years of Dominion service. "There is a manual override," he said finally, "located near the ship's core, deep within the vessel. If someone could reach it physically, they could disable the weapon before it fires, but it would mean boarding a ship in the middle of active combat, with no guarantee of survival." Elena looked at the tactical display, at the countdown to detonation, at the weight of every life depending on the next decision she made. "Then someone needs to board that ship," she said, "and I need someone who knows exactly where that override is located." Draven met her eyes, understanding immediately what she was asking, and what it would cost him personally to do it. "I know the way," he said quietly. "I will go." "Draven, this could be a death sentence. Your former crew, your former commander, they will show you no mercy if you are captured aboard that ship." "I know," Draven said, "but I did not come this far to let fear stop me now. Get me close to the hull, Admiral. I will find a way inside." Elena hesitated only a moment longer before giving the order that would decide the fate of the battle, and perhaps far more than just this single battle, resting entirely on the courage of one enemy captain who had already given up everything to stand beside the people he once called enemy. "Take us in," she said. "We're getting you aboard that ship, Captain Kell, and we are not leaving without you." Elena's fighter, damaged but still flying, pushed close to the hull of Thane's massive command ship, weaving between weapon batteries that had not yet regained full power from the shield collapse. "There," Draven said, pointing toward a small maintenance airlock near the rear of the vessel. "That entrance leads to a service corridor, close to the ship's core. It is not heavily guarded. It was never meant to be a point of attack." "Get ready," Elena said, guiding the fighter as close as she dared. "This is as good as it gets, Captain. Once you're aboard, you're on your own, until we can find a way back to you." "I understand the risk," Draven said. He turned to look at her for one brief moment. "If I do not return, Admiral, know that answering your message was the first thing in years that I have been proud of." "You'll return," Elena said firmly. "That's an order, Captain." Draven allowed himself the smallest smile. "I did not realize I was under your command now." "You are today," Elena said. "Go. We'll cover you as long as we can." Draven activated his emergency suit, cycled through the fighter's small airlock, and launched himself across the short gap of space toward the maintenance entrance, using a compact thruster pack to guide his trajectory. Behind him, Elena's fighter and two remaining strike craft laid down covering fire, destroying nearby point defense turrets that might have targeted him during the crossing. He reached the airlock, forced it open with an override code that, thankfully, had not yet been changed since his transfer months earlier, and disappeared into the ship's interior. Inside, the corridors of the HFY Vengeance's sister ship, for Thane's command vessel, was of the same class Draven had once served aboard, were eerily familiar. He moved quickly, quietly, drawing on memories of 100 drills and inspections to navigate toward the ship's core. Twice he encountered maintenance crew, and twice he used his rank and the chaos of battle to bluff his way past, claiming to be responding to an emergency repair order. It worked, because no one aboard the ship could imagine that the traitor captain would be foolish, or brave, enough to board the very vessel hunting him. He reached the core chamber just as alarms began blaring through the corridors behind him. Someone had noticed the unauthorized access, and security teams were being dispatched. Draven worked fast, accessing the manual override panel Thane's engineers had installed for the modified self-destruct weapon. His hands moved with practiced precision, entering codes he remembered from his years of service. Codes that, thankfully, still worked, because Thane's crew had not expected anyone to know them, let alone use them against their own ship. "Come on," Draven muttered under his breath, watching the countdown timer on the weapon's charge sequence continue ticking downward. "Come on, work." The override panel flickered, resisted, and then finally accepted his command sequence. The weapon's charge began to drop, slowly at first, then faster, as the dangerous energy buildup dissipated safely back into the ship's containment systems. "Weapon disarmed," Draven said into his comm, breathless with relief. "Admiral, the threat is neutralized. Thane cannot use the self-destruct weapon." "Copy that, Captain," Elena's voice came back, filled with relief. "Now get out of there." Security is likely closing in. As if summoned by her words, the core chamber's door burst open, and Draven found himself facing 4 armed Dominion security officers, weapons raised, and behind them, walking forward with fury etched across every feature of his face, Karsoff Thane himself. "Draven Kell," Thane said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "I should have known you would find a way to betray us further, disarming my weapon, helping these creatures humiliate an entire fleet." "I did not betray my people, Commander," Draven said steadily, raising his hand slowly, to show he held no weapon. "I betrayed a lie. There is a difference." "There is no difference," Thane snarled. "You have sided with a species that will consume every resource in this galaxy, if left unchecked. You have doomed us all." "Have I?" Draven asked. "Or have you simply been told that lie so many times you can no longer imagine any other truth? I have spoken with these humans, Commander. I have seen how they fight to protect children, elders, the innocent. I have seen no different from what any Caliph parent would do to protect their own family. They are not the monsters we were taught to fear. They are simply people, fighting to survive, exactly as we would in their place." Thane's expression flickered, just for a moment, something like doubt crossing his hardened features, before fury reasserted itself. "Take him," he ordered his security team. "He will answer for his crimes before the full Dominion Council." But before the security officers could move, the ship shuddered violently, alarms shifting to a new, more urgent tone. "Commander, our forward cruisers are in full retreat." A voice crackled over the ship's internal comm. "Human reinforcement signatures detected at the edge of the system. Unknown origin. Unknown fleet size." Thane's face paled. "Reinforcements? That is not possible. Human forces in this sector were already reduced to nothing." But it was true. Word of the desperate battle at Perimeter Station 6 had reached beyond the immediate sector, and 3 additional human fleets, smaller, battered, but real, had made the difficult journey to answer Elena's earlier call for aid, arriving just as the battle reached its most critical moment. Faced with an unexpected reinforcement, a disabled self-destruct weapon, and a command ship with collapsed shields, Thane made the only decision his training allowed in the face of such uncertainty. "Full retreat," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. "All ships, disengage and regroup at the rally point. We will return with proper force, prepared for what we now know these humans are capable of." He turned back to Draven, his eyes burning with hatred. "This is not over, traitor. But today, it seems, is not the day I settle this account." As Thane's security team was ordered to withdraw alongside the rest of the retreating fleet, Draven found himself, remarkably, unshackled and unpursued, left standing alone in the core chamber as the Grey Fleet began its full retreat from the battle it had been so certain of winning only hours before. The retreat of the Grey Fleet, when it came, was a sight Elena Voss had not dared to hope she would ever witness. 300 ships, turning away, abandoning the assault on Perimeter Station 6, leaving behind wreckage, and, against all odds, leaving behind a living, breathing enemy captain who had risked everything to make this moment possible. Elena's fighter reached the maintenance airlock just as Draven emerged, exhausted but alive, and together, they made their way back to human lines as the last of the Grey Fleet vanished into the dark beyond the system's edge. 600,000 people on Perimeter Station 6 would live to see another day. It was not a victory that ended the war. Draven had been honest about that from the very beginning, and everyone understood the Dominion would return, likely with greater force and greater caution. But it was a victory nonetheless. A single station saved, a single fleet commander humiliated and forced to retreat. And perhaps, most importantly, proof that the war did not have to be fought the way it always had been. In the days that followed, as Perimeter Station 6 began the slow process of repair and recovery, Elena found Draven once more in the small observation garden, looking at the same row of flowering plants that had caught his attention days before. "You will not be able to return to Dominion space now," Elena said, sitting beside him. "Not after today." "No," Draven agreed. "Thane will report what happened, eventually, however he chooses to frame it. My name will be marked as a traitor throughout the Dominion. I have accepted this cost." "Then what will you do?" Draven considered the question for a long moment. "I do not know entirely," he said, "but I know I do not regret my choice, and I believe there may be others within the Dominion who feel as I once did, trapped by a lie they no longer believe, waiting for proof that another path is possible. If such people exist, perhaps I can help them find their way, the same way your message helped me find mine." Elena nodded slowly. "The Council has been discussing what to do about the information you've provided, and about you personally. There are some who see you as a valuable ally. Others remain deeply suspicious." "That is fair," Draven said. "Trust cannot be given all at once. It must be built, slowly, through actions rather than words. I am willing to prove myself for as long as it takes." "Then perhaps," Elena said, "this is only the beginning of a different kind of war. Not one fought only with weapons, but with truth, exposing the lies your empire has told its people, finding others like you, willing to see past what they have been taught." "A war fought with truth," Draven repeated softly. "I like that far better than the war I have spent my life fighting." Above them, through the station's damaged but slowly repairing dome, the stars stretched out in every direction, endless and unknown, filled with dangers still to come, but also, perhaps for the first time in 11 long years, filled with a small, stubborn possibility of peace. The human empire had sent a message into the dark, asking only to be seen, to be heard, before the end came. And though only one enemy captain had answered that call, his single choice had changed the shape of everything that followed. The war was far from over. But for 600,000 people on Perimeter Station 6, and for one Calith captain who had finally found something worth believing in, today had been a day worth fighting for. And somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, Elena Voss allowed herself, at last, to hope that the future might hold more than simply survival. It might, one day, hold peace.